Every December, while most people are trying to slow down, I become more alert. That may sound odd. The culture treats the end of the year like a soft landing, slow music, holidays, shopping. A little indulgence dressed up as reward. People tell themselves they will think seriously in January. They will get organized in January. They will start saving in January. They will fix the habits in January. They will become responsible in January. I have never liked that phrase, in January. It is one of the most expensive phrases in personal finance because by the time most people reach January, the year has already been emotionally framed. The spending has happened, the subscriptions rolled over. The insurance renewed at a price. Nobody questioned. The tax advantages got ignored. The emergency fund stayed stale. The salary kept flowing through the same old holes. The system remained unchanged, which means the outcomes will probably remain unchanged too. I have spent most of my life around capital, around businesses, around systems, around the repeated behaviors that separate people who merely earn money from people who build something steadier with it. The older I get, the less impressed I become by financial enthusiasm that has no operating system beneath it. Goals without structure are decoration. Hope without process is entertainment. A budget you never revisit is a fantasy novel with numbers in it. That is why I care so much about the end of the year. December is not just a sentimental month. It is a control point. It is where a thinking person can pause the noise, look honestly at what the last 12 months actually were, and decide whether next year will be a continuation of drift or the beginning of design. I do something every year that I call a money reset. I do not mean I sit with a candle and whisper affirmations at my brokerage account. I mean something much more useful. I audit reality. That is where serious money always begins, not in optimism. In reality, the first thing I want to know is very simple. What actually happened, not what I intended, not what I told myself in March, not what I almost started in June. What happened? This is the exercise I would call your money wrapped. People like Spotify wrapped because it tells the truth in a fun costume. It shows you your habits in data instead of in flattering self-description. You may think you have wonderful taste. Then the playlist reveals what you actually repeated when no one was looking. Money should be treated the same way. A year-end snapshot of your financial behavior is one of the most clarifying documents you can create because it removes the emotional fog from memory. Memory lies beautifully. Bank statements are less poetic, so I sit down with everything. Income statements, pay stubs, side income records, investment contributions, bank transactions, credit card history. The whole year. And I ask 3 questions. What came in, what went out, and what was truly left? That last question matters much more than people think. Most people think they know their surplus because they subtract spending from income and feel relieved if there is anything positive at the end. That is not enough. You need to know what was truly left after intentional saving and investing had already happened. Otherwise, you are confusing money that was already assigned a wise job with money that remained unemployed. Those are different things. If I earned $10,000 in a month, spent $7,000, and put $2,000 towards saving and investing, then the real surplus is not $3,000, it is $1,000. The extra $1,000 is the amount that got through the whole structure without a purpose. That matters because unused capacity is information. It tells you where you are underestimating your own ability to direct money. It tells you where next year's progress can come from without pain. That is the hidden gift of the year-end review. Not guilt clarity. I want to know the true surplus, because true surplus is not merely extra cash. It is evidence that the system can be strengthened. And if the number is negative, that is valuable too. A deficit is not a moral failure. It is a diagnosis. Perhaps the income was too low. Perhaps fixed costs got too high. Perhaps lifestyle drift moved faster than the salary. Perhaps one rough season tipped the whole structure into survival mode. Fine reality is allowed to be inconvenient. What matters is whether you are willing to look at it directly. Most people are not. They prefer approximation because approximation protects the ego. I prefer honesty because honesty protects the future, so I review the whole year, month by month if necessary. patterns always appear. Maybe winter spending rises because you get tired, stay indoors, order more, numb yourself with delivery and convenience. Maybe summer spending explodes because weddings, travel, social plans, and a kind of seasonal financial looseness arrive all at once. Maybe there are months where your spending had nothing to do with need and everything to do with emotion. That is another reason the money wrap matters. It reveals not only your arithmetic but your psychology. The more clearly you can see the emotional fingerprints on your spending, the less power those emotions have over next year. That is not just finance. That is self-command, and self-command compounds. Now, once I understand the true picture of the year, I move to the second stage, the yearly audit. This is where people often imagine the savings must be tiny and irritating. They picture me advising you to obsess over every coffee, every snack, every little convenience. I have no patience for that style of financial theater. The big leaks are almost never the gummy bears. The big leaks are the subscriptions. Nobody uses. The renewals, nobody renegotiates. The insurances, nobody shops. The memberships, nobody values. And the recurring charges everybody forgets, because forgetting is how the modern payment world keeps getting paid. This is one of the easiest ways to improve your financial life and one of the most ignored. Go through every recurring payment, not some of them, everyone's streaming services, apps, cloud tools, gym memberships, software subscriptions, phone plans, broadband insurance, every automatic withdrawal that now feels like part of the wallpaper of your life. People laugh at this because it sounds too ordinary. That is why it works. The financial industry has trained people to look for dramatic transformations. They want one giant trade, one giant windfall, one giant life hack. They miss the dull recurring drains that quietly remove 4 figures a year from their future. I do not mind paying for things I use. I mind paying mindlessly. That is the distinction. A subscription that brings real utility or joy can be sensible. A subscription you forgot about is not a service. It is a tax on your inattention. And inattention is one of the most expensive habits in consumer finance. Now, the real savings often live one layer deeper: insurance. Phone plans, broadband. These categories become expensive because the provider is counting on your laziness. They know inertia is profitable. They know most people would rather overpay quietly than endure 10 minutes of comparison. So prices drift upward and households absorb it until the number has become absurd enough to notice. By then, years may have passed. I respect systems that exploit laziness, not because I admire them morally, because they teach us where discipline actually belongs. If a provider assumes you will not switch, then one of the easiest ways to improve your financial life is to become a person who periodically checks, not constantly, systematically. Once a year is often enough in many categories. That alone can free up surprising money, not miracle money, real money, the sort that, when automated properly later, begins changing the shape of your accounts. Then I move to the third step, and this is where the whole structure either becomes sane or stays fragile, rebuilding the financial foundation. People love the language of investing because it sounds intelligent and slightly glamorous. Fewer people love the language of foundations because foundations are boring and invisible and nobody posts them online. I trust foundations. A house with a bad foundation can still look beautiful from the street. It is still a bad house. A financial life with weak foundations can still look prosperous on social media. It is still a fragile life. So I ask 3 questions. Do I have enough emergency liquidity for the life I live now, not the life I used to live? Am I holding too much cash above that reserve and letting inflation quietly reduce its power? And am I investing enough of what does not need to remain liquid for the next 5 years? Those are 3 different questions. Most people answer none of them. Let us start with the emergency fund. People often build one years ago and then never revisit it. They treat the number as a trophy. I dislike trophies in finance. A reserve is not meant to be admired. It is meant to function. If your rent is higher now, if your insurance costs more, if you have children now, if you have a dog now, if you lease a car now, if your life costs more than it did when you first built the reserve, then the old reserve may not be protecting what you think it is protecting. That matters. Emergency money is not there to impress you. It is there, so one ugly month does not turn into 6 stupid decisions. I want 3 to 6 months of real living costs, not fantasy minimalism, real costs. That is what protects the structure. Now, once the reserve is truly funded, a different danger appears: excess idle cash. This is the point many people miss because they swing from one error to another. First, they live with too little liquidity and everything feels risky. Then they build a reserve and become so emotionally attached to the feeling of cash that they leave far too much of their capital sitting in low-yielding accounts, doing almost nothing. That is not prudence. That is stagnation. Cash has a job. Its job is protection, optionality, and short-term flexibility. Its job is not to become the final resting place of all your future wealth. Anything above your true emergency reserve that you do not expect to need within the next 5 years deserves serious scrutiny, not immediate reckless deployment. Serious scrutiny because inflation does not care that you feel safer watching a larger cash number. It keeps working. The wealthier person is not necessarily the one with the largest idle pile. It is the one who understands what each dollar is for: reserve dollars, near-term dollars, investment dollars, tax dollars, opportunity dollars. Capital should be assigned. This is where adulthood begins. And once I know that my emergency reserve is correct and my idle excess is visible, I ask the next question: what can now be deployed into productive ownership? For most people, most of the time, I still believe the answer remains broad, low-cost investing. Not because I lack imagination, because I respect probability, simplicity, and time. If money is not needed in the next 5 years, then the hurdle for leaving it idle becomes much higher. The person should at least be forced to admit what he is giving up by keeping it inert. That is the purpose of the year-end foundation review, not to push everyone into the market blindly, to stop people from living in structural contradiction. Too little reserve, and they are fragile; too much idle cash, and they are quietly shrinking. A strong foundation solves both. Now we arrive at the 4th step, and this is where I see the public lose ridiculous amounts of easy money, free money left on the table. I do not mean mystical gains. I mean literal structural advantages available to the person who bothers to look: employer match, tax allowances, charitable treatment, loss harvesting, where appropriate, year-end contribution opportunities. These are not advanced tricks. They are part of the ordinary terrain, and yet millions simply ignore them. This is one of the strangest things in personal finance. People will spend 20 hours debating a speculative asset on the internet and not 10 minutes confirming whether they are fully capturing their employer match. That is insanity. An employer match is not merely helpful. It is among the cleanest returns available to ordinary workers. If your employer says, "I will add money if you contribute," and you fail to capture the full match, you are effectively refusing compensation that was already available to you. No low-drama explanation makes that sensible. So year-end is the moment to check. Are you enrolled? Are you contributing enough? Are you leaving money behind because some old salary percentage remained unchanged while the opportunity moved? That check alone can change the next decade more than most people imagine. Then come the tax advantages. Different jurisdictions work differently. Fine. I do not need every person to memorize global tax calendars. I do need people to respect the fact that tax allowances often expire if unused. That matters. A person who ignores year-end contribution windows, loss offsets, or donation treatment because the paperwork felt dull is not being too busy to optimize. He is paying an attention tax. I dislike attention taxes intensely. Now, I am not interested in turning normal households into amateur tax magicians. That often goes badly. But I am deeply interested in making sure a household knows what the major year-end doors are and whether it walked through them. If the law gives you a legal way to reduce drag, then use it. Every dollar not unnecessarily lost to drag becomes a better compounding unit. Again, this is not glamorous. Again, that is why it works. Then comes the 5th step. setting financial goals for the next 12 months. Now this is where most people become unserious without realizing it. They say things like, I want to be better with money. I want to save more. I want to get organized. I want to invest more consistently. These are not goals. They are polite fog. A goal must have a number, a timeline, and a monthly implication. Otherwise, you are not planning. You are hoping with better posture. I want specific goals. Save $6,000 by December. Build emergency reserve to $18,000 by September. Increase investing by $400 a month by March. Pay off the $8,000 credit card by October. That is language the mind can work with. Then I want the reverse engineering. If the goal is $6,000 in a year, the monthly implication is $500. If $500 is impossible, then the goal, timeline, or structure must change. Reality gets a vote. This is another reason year-end matters. You have a full year of evidence behind you. You are not guessing in the dark. You know what the last 12 months look like. That makes the next 12 far easier to plan intelligently. And once the goal, many daily money decisions become easier. Not because discipline suddenly feels pleasurable, because ambiguity is gone. A clear goal gives money direction. Direction reduces friction. A person with no target makes every spending decision in isolation. A person with a target asks a better question. Does this help or delay what I already decided matters? That question, and if the first 5 were reflection, this is the place where reflection becomes a machine, your money operating system. I love that phrase because it gets the hierarchy right. You are not trying to become a heroic money manager every month. You are trying to build a system strong enough that your future does not depend on repeated heroism. Most people fail with money not because they do not know enough. They fail because they rely on memory, mood, and willpower in categories. Where willpower is a very weak employee, life gets noisy, children get sick, work gets ugly, travel happens, distraction wins. If your financial progress depends on your perfect mood every month, it will eventually stop. That is why automation matters so much. Good financial behavior should happen before you have the chance to talk yourself out of it. Savings, investing, retirement transfers, bill payments, sinking funds, all of that should be prearranged wherever possible. Not because automation is trendy, because it removes opportunities for weakness to vote. I like saving before I see what is left. That is one of the most powerful small changes a person can make. Save and invest first, then let spending happen inside what remains. The reverse order leaves the future begging the present for mercy, and the present is usually a poor steward of the future. Sinking funds matter too. I do not trust adults who act surprised by expenses that are entirely predictable in type, if not in exact timing. Car maintenance, birthdays, annual insurance, travel, home repairs. These things are not emergencies in the deepest sense. They are irregular certainties. A sinking fund turns predictable future friction into manageable monthly preparation. That is another kind of peace. Then there is friction reduction. This is more behavioral than financial, but behavior decides almost everything in money. If the emergency fund sits in the same account as your spending money, it gets touched more easily. If your savings app is hidden and your shopping apps are one tap away, that affects outcomes. If every good financial action requires 6 annoying steps while every bad one is frictionless, then you have built an environment hostile to your own goals. The wise person reduces friction for good behavior and increases it for bad behavior. That is not gimmicky, that is engineering. And finally, I like a simple dashboard, not a performative financial command center designed to make you feel like a hedge fund manager, a clear snapshot income, core expenses, saving rate, investment contributions, emergency fund, debt balances, progress toward the 1 or 2 main goals. That is enough. The purpose of a dashboard is not to entertain you. It is to let you see quickly what matters and whether the machine is still aligned. That is what year-end should produce, not a burst of temporary motivation. A machine that can run while you live your life. That is the whole idea. Money should support a good life. It should not become the whole theater of your identity. Now I want to say one thing that people often misunderstand. You do not need perfection for this to work. Perfection is another expensive phrase. You do not need 6 perfect systems built in one night. You do not need every app, every tracker, every category, every account, every automation at once. You need motion, one truthful review, one reserve correction, one free money check, one clear goal, one automation. That alone can change next year. The point is not to build an elaborate machine that flatters your sense of discipline. The point is to build a small number of durable mechanisms that continue working after the excitement leaves. That is what real financial adults do. They stop asking how to feel more motivated and start asking how to reduce the number of times motivation is required. I trust systems more than moods. Moods are expensive. Systems compound. So if you ask me what December is for, I would say this. It is not for vague reflection. It is not only for celebration. It is for audit. It is for recalibration. It is for making sure that the money you earned over the last 12 months did not merely pass through your hands but taught you something about how next year should be built. That is why I do the reset. Not because I enjoy paperwork, because I enjoy entering a new year with fewer illusions. And illusions are what keep people financially tired. A person who knows his real surplus is stronger than a person who merely hopes there will be one. A person who cancels the dead recurring costs is stronger than a person who says he will try to spend less. A person who adjusts the reserve correctly is stronger than a person who merely feels cautious. A person who uses the match, the allowance, and the legal tax advantage is stronger than the one who lets them expire because life got busy. A person who writes one clear goal with numbers is stronger than the one who promises to do better. And a person with an operating system is stronger than a person with excellent intentions and no machine. That is why I care about these 6 steps. Not because they sound good, because they change structure. And structure is what decides whether next December feels like another desperate cleanup or the first calm proof that your money is finally doing what it was told to do.